What is the best way to defeat racism? Given the violent history of the KKK and Nazi Germany, one may conclude that those who share the same beliefs today must be shut down with force, violently. But there are those who have an opposing viewpoint, who believe the best way to defeat racism is to prove racists wrong. I'm Matt Orfalea, and here are 5 amazing stories about people who defeated racism by approaching their enemies peacefully. Story number 1. You may remember the 1998 film American History X. It's about a neo-Nazi who faced his ignorance and turned his back on his past. What you may not know is the film was inspired by a real story, that of this man, Frank Mink, a former neo-Nazi recruiter.
I was a violent human being. I was the most evilest, diabolical person you've ever met.
After serving several years in prison, given his violent history, Frank was struggling to find a job.
I couldn't get a job. I was aggravated kidnapping on my record. I got a swastika on my neck.
Despite his Nazi tattoos, the one person who gave him a job was a Jewish man who owned a furniture store named Keith.
My last thing to hold on to is this hatred of Jews, and then here's this guy gives me a job that nobody else was giving me a job at the time. Nobody.
Frank was surprised, but still thought Keith wouldn't pay him the money he owed him because he was Jewish. But not only would Keith pay Frank at the end of the week, he gave him an extra $100 because he was a good worker.
I kept being wrong. He kept proving me wrong and not even knowing it.
One day, Frank accidentally broke a piece of furniture and was beating himself up about it.
I was like, Keith, I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid, dude.
Keith got upset with Frank, not for breaking the furniture, but for calling himself stupid.
Here's where he blew my mind. He goes, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You're just smart, dude. Get over it.
And that was my day. I made the decision, like, I'm done.
The day that people treated me as a human being, I couldn't fight that.
Story number 2. Filmmaker Deeyah Khan covered the Unite the Right rally that turned violent in Charlottesville. There she met Brian Culpepper, a leader of the neo-Nazi National Socialist movement, dedicated to the idea of creating a white ethno-state.
What I would be doing, Deeyah, is ensuring the preservation of my race and my nation. That's what it comes down to. Everyone that was ordered to do so would have to leave.
Including me.
Including you.
While filming her documentary, Brian and Deeyah got to know each other, and over the course of time, Brian underwent a drastic change of heart. Sometime after filming, Brian contacted Deeyah to tell her that he was resigning from the neo-Nazi group.
Actually retiring from the NFL after almost 11 years.
Wow.
He said one of the reasons was because he was upset about the racist abuse Deeyah had received from people in the far-right movement.
It really did bother me, at the human level, to hear some of the comments, the things that were made to you.
So today, Brian Culpepper would not deport me?
I would not.
And why not?
Because we've become friends.
Story number 3 is about Daryl Davis, a black man who made friends with a national Ku Klux Klan leader, Roger Kelly.
I believe in separation of the races. I believe that's in the best interest of all races.
The relationship started when Daryl's secretary set up an interview and didn't tell Kelly that Daryl was black.
I would find things in common. And as I began to build on those commonalities, the things that we had in contrast as trivial as skin color began to matter less and less.
We get to know one another and we do different things. It hasn't changed my views about the Klan, because my views on the Klan's been pretty much cemented in my mind for years.
But over a period of time, that cement began to crack.
I'm a far-right man to hell I'm back, because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I'll respect him to sit down and listen to him.
And eventually, that cement crumbled.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
He ended up leaving the Klan, and there's his robe right there.
Davis and Kelly became so close that Kelly named Davis his daughter's godfather. Over the years, Daryl Davis befriended dozens of KKK members who, over time, like Roger Kelly, ended up rethinking their ideology and quitting the KKK.
There you go.
Story number 4 is about Ken Parker, another neo-Nazi that Deeyah Khan met in Charlottesville.
Trust me, I have thought about getting pigs' heads and scattering them around mosques and stuff like that, but I haven't. The worst I've done is bacon.
Despite his disturbing behavior, the more time Deeyah spends with Ken and the more questions she asks him, the more questions he seems to ask himself.
Why are you nice to me?
You've been completely respectful to me. I actually consider you to be a friend. You know, my opinion about Muslims since I've been interacting with you has gone up significantly. It comes down to when my girlfriend was in the hospital for a month and the only one that called to see how she was doing was a woman from the mosque. I will never break bread with a Jew, though.
Had to go and say something, didn't you?
Ken's outlook continued to change slowly.
It was the first time in my life I'd ever really interacted with a Muslim.
In 2018, Ken publicly apologized and denounced white supremacy. Interesting detail, he's now a member of an otherwise all-black church. Story number 5, beer buddies. James Bessinger, who chairs a Confederate Heritage Party, and Jonathan Thrower, a black nationalist, had been arguing on Facebook for months. But rather than block each other, they decided to meet for a beer.
It was the first time I've heard from someone on that side of the debate who didn't describe me as a racist or a fascist or a neo-Nazi. So it was kind of refreshing to see that there were people that were paying close enough attention to at least see where we were really coming from without jumping to assumptions.
What about the people that are kind of further on the fringe from your position, who are going to look at you and say, you know what, you've sold out, you're not one of us anymore?
If what you're telling me is that I'm selling out because I'm telling you don't go to jail for pulling down a statue, then I think the problem is with you, and we need to actually refocus our energy and our intelligence on getting solutions that are going to raise the economic level of black people here in this city.
James Bessinger, what about the neo-Nazis or the Klan or other people who might just say, you know what, you're a traitor. I can't believe you're sitting shoulder to shoulder with this guy right now.
When organizations like that present themselves at these events like what we saw in Charlottesville, it only exacerbates the problem, and they have made absolutely zero progress as far as calling me a race traitor or what have you. I could care less if someone sees me as a race traitor. Me and this man have more in common with each other than I do with some of those people.
Well, those 5 stories sure give me hope for the future. But what do you think? Let's duke it out in the comments.
When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting. They might be yelling and screaming and shouting and beating their fists on the table, but at least they're talking, they're not fighting.
I'm Matt Orfalea, asking everyone out there to please keep talking.